Welcome to EnglishLab Channel. Tune in to natural fluency.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the English Lab Channel. I am so incredibly happy to be here with all of you today. My name is Michelle, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host and partner in crime, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Michelle. I've been looking forward to this recording all week because we are tackling a topic that I think is going to resonate with so many of our listeners. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris. Today, we are diving into a really exciting discussion: how to learn English grammar without ever picking up a dusty, boring textbook. It sounds like a dream, doesn't it? But before we jump into the deep end of this topic, please, if you like the content and you're finding it helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss an episode, share this with your friends, and leave us a comment. Your support really helps us keep the lights on here at English Lab.
Exactly. We love seeing those comments roll in. And honestly, Chris, the idea of learning without books is so relevant because I feel like most people get a bit of a headache just looking at a table of irregular verbs. I remember when I was first looking into how languages work, I thought I had to memorize every single rule before I could even say hello. But that's just not how it works in the real world, is it?
Not at all, Michelle. In fact, relying too much on books can sometimes slow you down because you're focusing on the math of the language instead of the music of it. When we talk about acquiring grammar naturally, we're really talking about something called contextualization.
Oh, that sounds like a very interesting term, Chris. Could you expand more on what you mean by that for everyone listening?
Of course. Think of it this way. Instead of seeing a sentence in a vacuum on page 42 of a workbook, you see it in a movie or hear it in a song. The context is the situation surrounding the words. If you hear a character say, "I've been waiting for ages," while they're looking at their watch and looking annoyed, you understand the grammar of the present perfect continuous without needing a lecture. You see the emotion, the setting, and the intent. That is contextualization in action.
That makes so much sense. It's like your brain maps the feeling to the structure. I actually had a similar experience when I was trying to understand how to use phrasal verbs. I stopped looking at lists and started watching sitcoms. At first, it felt overwhelming because there was just so much information coming at me. I think researchers call that an input flood.
That's a powerful expression, Michelle, but I'm not sure I've quite mastered the nuance of it yet. Could you use it in another example for me?
Sure. Imagine you want to learn how to talk about the future. Instead of doing one exercise, you spend a whole afternoon watching tech reviews of upcoming gadgets. Every single video is saying this is going to change everything, or the company will release it in June. Because you are drowning, in a good way, in examples of future tenses within a specific topic, you're experiencing an input flood. Your brain starts to recognize the patterns because it sees them 100 times in an hour.
I love that. A good kind of drowning. It's funny you mention patterns because that leads perfectly into one of my favorite ways to teach, which is inductive learning.
Oh, Chris, that's another one of those terms that sounds a bit fancy. Can you break that down for us? How does that apply to our listeners?
My bad. I sometimes get too excited about the theory. Basically, most books use deductive learning. They give you the rule first, then the example. Inductive learning is the opposite. You look at the examples first, and then you figure out the rule. It's like being a detective. If you see 5 sentences using used to, you start to notice, hey, wait, they always use this for things that don't happen anymore. You discover the rule yourself.
I love being a language detective. It makes the whole process feel like a game rather than a chore. And I think when we do that, we start to pay attention to the actual syntax of the language without even trying.
That's a great word, Michelle. But for those who might be hearing it for the first time, could you use it in another context or explain it a bit more?
Naturally. So syntax is basically just the order of the words. In English, the order is usually very strict compared to other languages. When you learn grammar without books, you aren't memorizing subject plus verb plus object. Instead, you're just getting used to the rhythm of the syntax. If someone says, "blue the sky is," your ears immediately tell you something is wrong because you've developed a feeling for the correct word order through listening.
Blue the sky is. Sounds like Yoda. But you're right, Michelle. That feeling you're talking about is actually a sign that you are developing metalinguistic awareness.
Okay, Chris, now you're definitely showing off. That's a big one. Can you explain that a bit more? I'm curious how that helps someone who's just trying to speak better at work or with friends.
I promise it's simpler than it sounds. Metalinguistic awareness is just the ability to think about language as an object. When you stop just using English and start noticing how it works, like noticing that a certain coworker always uses would to sound more polite, you are using that awareness. It's like having a little bird on your shoulder that says, "Hey, notice how they use that word there?" It's a superpower for self-correction.
I love the idea of a little language bird on my shoulder. Polly wants a preposition. But seriously, Chris, I think a big part of that awareness comes from learning collocations.
Oh, that's a term I've heard before, but I'd love to hear you expand on it, Michelle. Could you give us a few more examples of how those work in everyday life?
Of course, collocations are just words that naturally hang out together. For example, in English, we say fast food, but we don't usually say quick food, even though fast and quick mean the same thing. Or we make a mistake instead of do a mistake. When you learn through books, you often learn single words. But when you learn through podcasts or movies, you learn these groups of words. It makes you sound way more natural because you're not translating. You're just using the pairs that native speakers use.
That's so true. I always tell people that if you get the pairs right, the grammar almost takes care of itself. And that actually leads to what every student wants, which is implicit knowledge.
That sounds like the holy grail of language learning, Chris. Can you tell us more about what that looks like in a real conversation?
It really is the holy grail. Implicit knowledge is when you know how to use the language without knowing why. It's like riding a bike. You don't think about the physics of balance while you're pedaling. You just do it. When you have implicit knowledge of English grammar, you don't think, okay, now I need to use the third-person singular S. The S just comes out of your mouth automatically. Books usually give you explicit knowledge, the rules, but real-life interaction gives you the implicit kind.
I want that. I think we all want that. But I've noticed that even when we are getting better, we all go through a stage where our English is a bit of a work in progress. I heard a teacher once call this the interlanguage phase.
Oh, that's a fascinating term, Michelle. I don't think I've quite mastered how to explain that one. Could you use it in another example or expand on it for us?
Sure. Think of interlanguage as a bridge. It's the unique version of English that a student speaks while they are still learning. It's not wrong English, it's a developing system that has some rules from your native language and some rules from English mixed together. It's a sign of progress. If you're making mistakes, it means your interlanguage is evolving. You are building the bridge as you walk on it.
I love that metaphor, Michelle. Building the bridge while walking on it. That's exactly what it feels like. And I think as teachers and creators, our job is to provide the scaffolding to help people cross that bridge.
Scaffolding. I've heard that in construction, but how does it work in a podcast about grammar, Chris? Can you give us an example?
Exactly like construction. In learning, scaffolding refers to the temporary support we give a student to help them reach a higher level. For example, if we provide a list of useful phrases for a restaurant before you go and practice, those phrases are the scaffold. They hold you up while you build your confidence. Eventually, you don't need the list anymore, and the scaffold comes down, leaving a beautiful language building behind.
That's such a helpful way to look at it. It takes the pressure off. But there is one thing that scares me, Chris. I've met people who have lived in an English-speaking country for 20 years, but they still make the same small grammar mistake every day. I think the term for that is fossilization.
You're hitting us with the heavy hitters today, Michelle. Fossilization is definitely a scary word. Could you use it in another example? I want to make sure I really get the why behind it.
Sure. Imagine you learn to say, I have 20 years instead of I am 20 years old early on. If nobody corrected you and you never noticed the difference, that error might get stuck in your brain like a fossil in a rock. Even if you become very advanced, that one little mistake remains. The key to preventing fossilization is to keep that metalinguistic awareness we talked about earlier, staying curious and always noticing the language.
Well, I'm definitely staying curious. You know, Michelle, we've talked a lot about the theory, but let's give our listeners some really practical, no-book tips they can use today to improve their grammar.
I love that idea. My first tip is actually one of my favorites, the shadowing technique. You don't need a book for this, just a pair of headphones. Find a clip of a native speaker you like, maybe a YouTuber or a character in a show, and try to repeat exactly what they say while they're saying it. You're mimicking the rhythm, their intonation, and most importantly, their grammar patterns. It's like muscle memory for your tongue.
That's a classic, and it works wonders. My first tip would be visual grammar mapping. Instead of reading a rule about prepositions, go into your kitchen and literally put sticky notes on things. But don't just write the noun. Write a sentence like, "The coffee is in the cupboard," or "The keys are on the counter." Every time you make coffee, you're seeing the grammar in its physical place. You're connecting the abstract rule to a physical action.
I might need a lot of sticky notes for my house, Chris. Another great tip is social media immersion. But here's the trick. Don't just follow English learning accounts. Follow your actual hobbies. If you love cooking, follow English-speaking chefs. If you love video games, join an English Discord server. When you're arguing about the best way to bake a cake or the best strategy for a game, you're using grammar for a real purpose. You'll find yourself using complex structures because you need to explain your point, not because a book told you to.
That's a brilliant point, Michelle. Using the language as a tool is the fastest way to learn. And here's a bit of a wildcard tip for our listeners, something a bit different. Have you ever thought about learning grammar through technical manuals or niche hobbies?
Technical manuals, Chris? That sounds even more boring than a textbook.
Stay with me. I'm not talking about a toaster manual. I mean things like the rulebooks for complex strategy board games or even specialized hobbyist forums like birdwatching or high-stakes poker. These niches have a very specific, very precise type of grammar. Because the rules matter for the game or the hobby, your brain focuses intensely on the meaning. If you understand how a level 5 paladin functions in a game manual, you've just mastered some incredibly complex conditional sentences without even realizing it. It's learning through high-stakes interest.
I actually see your point. When the information actually matters to you, you'll fight to understand the grammar. It's like a puzzle you actually want to solve. Another tip I have is voice journaling. Instead of writing in a diary, record a 2-minute voice memo on your phone every night. Talk about your day. Then once a week, listen back to your older recordings. You'll start to hear your own interlanguage evolving. You'll notice, oh, I said he go, but I should have said he goes. It's a great way to build that self-correction without a teacher hovering over you.
I love that. It's like having a conversation with your past self. And my final tip is the caption challenge. When you watch a movie, turn the English subtitles on. But every now and then, pause the movie and try to predict what the character will say next based on the grammar of the first half of the sentence. If a character says, "If I had known you were coming," try to finish the sentence before you hit play. It turns passive watching into active grammar workout.
I do that all the time. My friends hate watching movies with me because I'm always pausing and shouting, "I would have baked a cake." It really does work, though. Chris, we've covered so much today, from the importance of context to being a language detective and even using board games as grammar tools.
We really have. It's been such a fun conversation. I hope everyone listening feels a bit more empowered to put the textbooks aside for a while and just live in the language.
Definitely. Let's do a quick recap for everyone. Remember, focus on contextualization and inductive learning. Don't be afraid of the input flood. It's just your brain getting used to the patterns. Pay attention to collocations and let your implicit knowledge grow over time. And most importantly, remember that your interlanguage is a bridge, not a barrier. Use scaffolding when you need it and keep that metalinguistic awareness sharp to avoid fossilization.
Perfect summary, Michelle. Now, we want to hear from you, our amazing community. What is one non-book way you've been using to practice your English grammar? Is it music? Is it gaming? Is it talking to your cat? Let us know in the comments. And please don't forget to tell us your name and what country you're listening from. We love knowing how far the EnglishLab family reaches.
Yes, please do. We read every single comment, and it truly makes our day. Thank you all for spending this time with us. It's been an absolute blast.
It really has. Stay curious, keep practicing, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Goodbye. Thanks for tuning in. Keep practicing, keep connecting, and don't let your fluency fade to static. Leave us a comment with your stories, hit that subscribe button to join our community, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. See you in the next